Hey, welcome to Crossroads Online. My name is Roy Cervantes and I serve as the worship pastor here at Crossroads Church. We believe in bringing a real God to real people through community, and that the church is more than just a building, but a group of people that are walking together and trusting Jesus every step of the way. Because of that, we're so glad that you decided to tap into our online resources, but this should in no way be a substitution from your involvement in the local church. I believe that God can speak directly to you and impact your life through this online message, but every single time he says, go and be a part of my church. There are a lot of things going on in the life of our church. Take a look around, and we hope that you enjoy this message.
Hot things whenever I made her mad, and she was just, but deep down, I think she really loved me. I'm like, this is, I'm first time doing a funeral. I'm like, what do you do? Like, do I cut it off, or do I hope somebody redeems it, but the nicer thing, right? So the third person comes up, and this person kind of gave me a little bit of bigger picture. Says, she had a really hard life. And that's probably why she was so mean. But finally, I cut it off. I'm like, there's nobody going to say any nice things, so I'm going to have to pull this one out of the gutter. So I'm like, hey, there's hope for everybody, right? You can clean up. And you just never know. And when we stand before God, he'll be the ultimate judge and all that stuff. So that funeral stuck out in my mind because I realized, well, here's what I know, right? I know this about you, right? This is something I'm 100% sure of. You are going to die one day. And you want people to say nice things about you once you're dead, right? I mean, is there anybody that say, I don't care what they say about me once I'm dead? No! You want people to say nice things about you once you're dead, right? Like you want people to say, oh, she was a good person and this and that, or he was a good person, right? Everybody agrees with that, right? Right? Here's what else I know about you. You think that you're generally a good and nice person. It got really silent, right? But I mean, isn't that true? Like, if you didn't think you were a good person, you'd change. But what happens is, when we do something we know isn't a good person thing to do, what do? We go, well, at least I'm not as bad as, right? So I do that. I'm like, I get angry, and I do stupid stuff when I get angry, and then I go, but you know what? He's really angry. I mean, like his anger put him in prison, so I'm a better person than him, right? So what happens is, we generally think we're a good person, and so we're pretty convinced that when we get to the end of our life, people are going to go, he was a good person. Or at least say at the end, like those guys did, well, I'm pretty sure she really loved me, or he really loved me. And it's the thing about it is, it's our actions are what defines what we're going to be remembered as, right? And we all want to be remembered as a good person. But here's the challenge we face is when we compare our goodness to those around us, it doesn't go well. Because what if you're in a really bad environment and your baseline of being better than everybody else is really not still very good? Like, who's the best person in the prison ward where all of the mass murderers are? Like, well, I'm the best. I've only killed 7 people. He's killed like 30. So I'm a pretty good person. People are going to say good stuff about me, right? Like, that's the problem. And Paul talks about this. He says, you don't go comparing yourselves to other people. That will lead you nowhere good, and you won't get a good idea of what your life could look like. He says, if you want to do this, you got to compare yourself to the perfect example, which is Jesus Christ. Now, the good news is Jesus came and he said, hey, I got you covered. You can't do it. You can't be perfect. I'm going to be your goodness for you. So I'm going to stand between you and God, and I'm going to be goodness. So when God looks at you and you accept the gift of Jesus, he sees the goodness, right? So you're already forgiven of your sins. And now we're called to walk out what it looks like to walk in that goodness. And this is where our legacy, or what people remember us for, comes at the end of our life. This is how we're remembered. It's how we lived out our life. And there's a verse in Proverbs 29:18. You've probably heard it before. It's a very well-known verse. And it's this right here. It says, where there is no prophetic vision, the people cast off restraint. But blessed is he who keeps the law. Now you say, well, first of all, what is prophetic vision? You mean you think of prophets and you think like in the apocalypse? Prophetic vision simply means this. You got to have a picture of something better to move towards, right? And if you don't, you will just keep walling. In fact, the Spanish version of this says, donde no hay visión, el pueblo se extravía. They start to wander around. And when you don't have a picture for anything better, you ever notice that, well, the caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland said it this way. Alice said, hey, how do I get where I'm going? And he goes, well, where are you going? And she said, I don't know. And he said, well, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And that's the reality that we face, is that if we don't have a picture for where we're going, any road will get us there. So we start comparing ourselves to people around us. I'm like, well, I'm doing better than them, but maybe where God has for you is way better than what you've got by comparing to the people around you. So you've got to have a picture for what your future looks like, or you're just going to start to wander around and you just won't have anything to live by, right? And then it says, but blessed is he who keeps the law. So what is the law, right? The law is simply a simple framework of standards of what you're going to do and how you're going to act. Simply that. So basically saying, if you don't have a set of a framework for how you're going to live your life, you'll just do whatever, right? So Jesus comes along, and we know that the law was given by Moses, right? Or God to Moses. So we know things like the 10 Commandments, don't kill, don't steal, right? But Jesus comes along and he says something weird. He says, hey guys, I fulfilled the law. Like, it's taken care of. You couldn't have even kept the law on your own. So I fulfilled it. So now here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to focus on the law. I want you to focus now on this one simple thing. Seek first his kingdom, the kingdom of God, and his righteousness, the goodness that comes from God himself through Jesus. And all that stuff you want, like he says in the verses before this, he says, you're sitting around worried about money. You're sitting around worried about your clothes, where you're going to live, what you're going to eat. He says, you don't have to worry about that if you'll just go after this one thing. And that one thing is this. He says, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. So if you want to get somewhere, if you want to have a vision for the future, he basically is saying this: you got to value what I value, because what I value will get you what you really want. And if you can value what I value, all that stuff you think you want, you'll get what you actually want. Now, here's the thing. We've all got values, right? There's all of us in our life. We have stuff we value. And we live our life based on what we value. So we've got things we say, well, I value my family, and I value a nice place to live, and I value pretty things. And there's all these things we value, and we live more consistently with what we value than what we realize we do, right? And you may have never sat around and thought, well, here's what I value. But if you want to figure out what you value, there's a simple way to do it. If you want to know what you value, look at what you do, not what you say or feel. Because we say we value certain things, but if you really want to know what somebody values, you look at what they do. For example, this. I hear people say all the time, oh, I really value my family. And they work I really value time with my family. And then they work 60 hours a week, taking time away from their family. So I say, well, no, you don't really value your family. You really value the money that comes from your job to give to your family. And maybe it's a noble idea that you want to maybe not make your kids have to go through what you did as a kid. But the reality of the situation is, if you really valued time with your family, you wouldn't be spending 60 hours a week at work. So for me, I've hit 40. This is what I've been thinking about a lot lately. My greatest frustrations in life come when what I'm doing doesn't line up with what I say I value. So I say I value one thing, but then I'm doing something else, and my doing reveals that I don't value what I say I value, and then I look at myself and I just get down on myself and I get angry and frustrated, right? So I'll give you a simple example of this, okay? I value staying in shape. I lead outdoor expeditions around the world 3 or 4 times a year, and I have to be ready to hike 30 to 40, sometimes up to 50 miles over a 4-day period up at 14,000 feet of altitude, okay? For obvious reasons, I can't let my physical health slide for too long. It's part of the reason I love what I'm doing, because it keeps me staying in shape, right? So I really value staying in shape. So I'll go to the gym a few times a week. Now, this summer has been brutal for our family because my wife is a flight attendant, and normally she works 3 days a month. It's a real great thing about her job. She can work 3 days a month, and we try and live on just my income and just we live a very simple life so we can do that, right? So she works 3 days a month. This summer, she has not been able to get time off. So she's gone 15, 20 days sometimes, right? And so when that happens, I'm watching our 3-year-old daughter, which I love doing. Don't get me wrong, okay? I love doing that. But what happens is when I'm watching my daughter, I can't go to the gym because if you've ever had a 3-year-old, they require a lot of attention, right? So she takes up all my time. And so what happens is Emily would come home and I'd be all angry and I'd be like, I didn't get anything done this week. And Emily feels all bad and I'm all grumpy and grouchy. And finally I stopped and I realized, wait, if the world is always bad to you, if something's always wrong with the world, the first place you need to start is look at yourself, because there's a good chance you're the problem, okay? That's kind of a punch in the face, sorry about that. But really, always start by asking yourself, maybe I'm the problem. So I started looking at it and I said, here's the reality of the situation. My gym has childcare and I pay for it in my membership. These people, they're vetted, they have background checks, they've all been trained in childcare. But here's the thing, I went in there once and I didn't like the environment. So I said, I'm not going to bring my daughter here. So now, when I really look at it honestly, I go, yes, I value working out, but you know what I value more than working out is keeping my daughter in an environment that I want for her. So that means that I'm not going to take her and drop her off at the childcare there, right? So what that means, though, is I don't need to be frustrated because I have put things in value order. My daughter comes first, and keeping her in a good environment, and then working out. And what that means is something has to be sacrificed. And you know how you find meaning in life? By sacrificing stuff for what's most important. And so when I look at my life, the reality is I could take my daughter to the gym and I could work out. But the reality is her being in a good environment is more important to me. So now I can lay my head, it's a perspective shift. I can lay my head to rest at night. I didn't get to work out, which I could be disappointed at, but really I lay calmly and peacefully because I go, no, today I lived by my values. I had to sacrifice something for something I really value. Now, take it a little step further. Values always conflict, right? So you've got all these values and you're always having to figure out what's the hierarchy, what's the order they belong in, and you have to live that out or you'll find yourself frustrated and disappointed with yourself. So here's another thing. There's another gym down the street from us that I could take my daughter to that has really amazing childcare, but it's $120 a month, and I ain't going to pay that. So another value came into conflict. I could pay more for childcare for my daughter, but I don't want it that bad, right? So money ended up below that. So you start putting in hierarchical order what you value most, and you do what you value most. And if you want to figure out right now, what is it I really value? You always look at what you do, not even what you say or even what you feel. I feel like my family's so important. But then you're not giving the family the value or the time it needs. And then that's why you're perpetually frustrated and disappointed with yourself. So we have to figure out the value, and we have to look at what we do and then place our values in the order of what is most important. And then most importantly, we line it up against what Jesus says is important. And when we do that, that's when we start finding meaning and fulfillment. And here's the thing. There's some stuff in your life that you're going to have to sacrifice. But you know what? When you sacrifice it, you say, you know what? Our kids just aren't going to play soccer this fall. I know they want to, but we can't do it. We've got too much going on. Financially, we can't afford it, and they're just going to have to deal with that. Or we're just too busy. I had a lady complaining to me the other day. She's like, my life is so busy. My life is so busy. And I started asking her what she was doing, and I said, do you realize that no one is forcing you to do any of those things? She got really mad at me. But I said, no, really what you value is you value being busy. No, I don't value being busy. I'm like, well, yes, you do. Because it's a badge of honor. When I ask, how are you doing? Oh, man, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. It's a thing. For some reason, she feels important when she's busy, right? So that's fine if that's a value. But here's the thing. Put it up here and say, be honest about it. Being busy is a value for me, right? Now, you line that up against what Jesus says, be still and know I'm God. Right? That's where you're going to have a problem. So you line up those values and sometimes you go, oh, snap. Maybe I've been living for something wrong, but here's the great news. You can change that. But you've got to get a vision and a picture for your future and what you want it to look like, because you're headed somewhere. And if you don't be intentional about it, the world is going to tell you what you should value. And what the world values, all you got to do is look at the results of what they value. Is it working out for them very well? No. You don't see a lot of peace and joy and hope and love. No, when we see that, we're like, wow, look, a glimpse of that. But we don't see a lot of that in the world. So here's my second point with this. Focus your vision, what you decide you're going to do with your life, on what you'll be, not what you'll accomplish. Now, this is a reality I came to recently, that I spent a lot of my 30s focused on the wrong stuff. Now, none of it was evil or sinful, but it was just wrong. It didn't get me where I wanted to go, and I was always angry and frustrated because you know what I was focused on? I was focused on what I was going to accomplish. I read all these books in my 20s that are like, you need to set a vision and write out what you're going to do and this and this and that. And here's the thing. So I set out these goals. I want to write books. I want to speak to this many people. I want to sell this many books. And you know what? A lot of those never happened. And I found myself over the last 3 years really disappointed. And you know, I was disappointed with God. And I was like, God, I set a vision. And one of the things that I came to the realization is God didn't care what I did. He cared who I was becoming. And the same is true in your life. And we read these books that say, set out these goals. And listen, there's very much value. I wrote a book about this, in setting out goals and going after them, right? There's proof that if you set those goals out. But here's the thing you need to focus on. The worst funerals you can go to, I went to a funeral recently, and my wife and I both commented on this. The funeral, the whole time, nobody talked about who this guy was. They talked about what this guy did. And they said, and the reality was he was a guy who was obsessed with money, obsessed with power and control, and his whole life, his family kind of despised him, and it was one of these funerals where everybody tiptoes around. They don't want to say anything bad about the person who died, not like that funeral I went to, but they don't want to say anything bad, but the reality is everything was based on what he accomplished. It was like, oh yeah, he did this, and he cleaned up an oil spill, and this and that, and it's like, that's good stuff, but nobody had anything good to say about who he was. When I was hiring for Southwest Airlines, I used to hire employees for them. One of the first things they said is this: don't look at their resume for accomplishments. Look at who they are, because you can always train somebody to do the job. You can train a monkey to do the job. But the person that they are and what they're about and what they value, that's what we're looking for. And a lot of times we focus on accomplishments and building our resume and all the time. That's not the stuff that's going to matter at the end of your life in the funeral. You've got to focus on who you're going to be. And here's the good news about this. I've learned, I can't control how many books I sell, how many people I speak to, how much I accomplish. But you know what I can control every day? Who I'm going to be. Every day I can look at my value system and say, today am I making wise choices? Today am I walking in humility? You can control that right now, right here, today. So, I'll leave you with this verse here, and then we're going to give you a couple action steps. Habakkuk 2:2, it says this: write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. And you say, I've got a tablet, my iPad, right? No, we're not talking about that. I'm talking about a tablet. We're talking about putting your values and the hierarchy of those values somewhere that you can see them every day and run a filter of your actions through that value system. So what that looks like for me, I don't have any tablets at home. But when my daughter was born a few years ago, I started thinking, what do I really want my daughter to live for? What do I want her to value? And here's the thing. There's a lot of things that Jesus values that we can value. But I would encourage you, figure out what are a few of them, 2, 3, or 4 of them that you really value in your family and that you're living by. And I didn't have any tablets, but I started this, we live in the age of screen printing. And I found that I could put the things I value for my daughter in a visible place. I started with a pillow. It's going to end up on the wall eventually. With these 4 values, and I really thought these through, and I want you guys to do this too. Where there's no vision, you dwell without restraint, but I thought through these values, and I said, these are the 4 values that I want for our daughter, and she's going to, eventually, when she gets older, she's going to come up with her own 4 or 5 or 6, but this is what I want my daughter to know. This is who the Malm family, this is who we are. This is what we represent, and this is how we live, and everything we do, we run it through the filter of this, because these are the things God values. So here's my 4 of them. This is how I thought them through. The first one is wisdom. There's a lot of knowledge in the world. All of the knowledge in the world can be accessed through your phone. But wisdom is right application of that knowledge. So we have access to tons of knowledge, but a lot of us aren't living wisely. Wisdom is the ability to live skillfully based on the knowledge we have. And I said wisdom is one of the core values. I want to live in wisdom, and I want our daughter to understand the power of wisdom. In fact, there's 3 whole books of the Bible that are called the wisdom books. They're dedicated to wisdom. Wisdom is important to God. So wisdom is one of our values. Another value is humility. I love humility because it encompasses growth and teachability. For you to grow, for you to change, at some point you have to recognize, I'm wrong about something, right? There's some opinion, some idea, some way I think about the world that's wrong right now. And for me to grow, I have to be humble enough to go, oh, I'm wrong. And listen, being right all the time, horrible value to live by. Because you won't be right all the time. You say, yeah, but I got to stand on what's right. You don't really necessarily know what's right most of the time. You know a few things that are right, but you don't have the whole corner on truth. So be humble. Recognize you don't know everything. Be teachable. You know, the worst attitudes that I see in people is this. They say, everything I know is all that needs to be known. And I say, wow, how's that going to work out for you? Like it's not going to work out for you. Humility is a key one. And so I could have put teachability, but I said humility is an important one. Next one, open hands. Generosity is a big deal for me, but for me and our family, it's about more than generosity. It's about realizing a posture towards God of saying, God, if you need to take something from me, it's yours. Corrie ten Boom said it this way, hold everything in your hands loosely, otherwise it hurts when God has to take it from you. God has greater and better things for you, and he may give you something for a season and then take it from you. And if you're holding on to it tightly, you'll miss out on what he wants to put in your hands. And there may be seasons in your life where he asks you to start or maybe restart empty-handed and alone because he wants to see how much you trust in him. And I want my daughter to live with that, recognizing, God, man, it's all, you can take it if you want. You can leave me completely. You can strip everything from me. But I'm not going to live tight-fisted or closed-handed, and I'm going to be open to whatever you want to put in my hands. So open hands is another value I've given for my daughter. Now listen, I'm not telling you this needs to be the values for you, okay? You got to figure that out on your own. These are the things that are for me. I'm just giving an example of this, a real-life example of how I'm doing this in my life. And then the final one is courage. I have struggled with fear my whole life, like major fear. And I've learned that fear will never go away. So you have to do it afraid. You just got to do it afraid. Whatever it is that's scaring you, take it in little doses. Turn and look at it and say, you're not going to take me down, right? You've got to be willing to do it afraid. And so that's one of the values for our daughter. Say, we live in a world that's scary. And you could hole up and try and protect yourself. Or you could say, you know what? No, I have confidence that God is with me. So I will boldly move ahead with courage. So these are the 4 values. These are the vision I've got for my family. And you notice it's about what will be, not what we'll accomplish. And maybe you need to do that. Maybe you need to sit down. In fact, I would encourage you, one of the action steps here is this. Write down a few things you want to be remembered for being. And maybe you need to really get honest about what you're doing. And maybe if you had your pillow right now, it would say, one of my greatest values is to control everyone around me and never be wrong. Put it on a pillow. See how that goes over, right? Maybe you realize, shoot, that's one of my values. And you know what? If it is, you can change. You can change today. Because every day you can decide who you're going to be, right? You say, one of my values is to make a lot of money. Hey, how would that look on a pillow, right? We instinctively know, no, that's a bad value system. But here's the thing, we live it out every day because we never stop to think about what is it that I'm living for? What's the vision I have for my life? So I want to encourage you guys to do this. And here's the thing. I know some of you go, well, I'm not a CEO of a company. This vision stuff is for CEOs. Listen to me. If you don't do this for yourself, the world's going to do it for you. If you don't do this for your kids, the world's going to do it for you. They're going to tell your kids what you should value or what they should value. They're going to tell you what you should value. And it's so subtle. So subtle. This is what happened to me, man. I've realized about 3 months ago, I kind of sat and I looked and I said, I'm stripping everything down. And I'm going to look back. I said, if I had to start all over again with everything I believe and know, what would I start with? And I've just stripped it down and I've realized this is what's most important. And I'm determined to live by just that because I've had a lifetime of the world telling me what's of value. And a lot of it's left me angry and disappointed with myself because I've been living by wrong values. And some of it wasn't blatantly evil or sin. It was just bad values. It's stuff Jesus doesn't value. And we have to constantly be checking that with ourselves. Say, what is it we value? What's the order it needs to be in? And what needs to be sacrificed to get what we really want of most value in our lives that's going to bring glory to Jesus and bring us joy. So do that. Write out a few things. Men, you've been looking for a chance to connect with your wife. Dude, this will score you some killer points. Women love men of vision, right? So sit down and say, what do you want to be remembered for being? What do we as a family want to be remembered for being? Not doing. Then the second thing is, line them up with the Word of God. I have a Bible verse that backs up every one of these. Line them up with the Word of God. Make sure that, oh yeah, that is what Jesus values. And then finally this, post them where you and your family can see them. You might want to put them on a pillow. You might want to put them on a wall. Make it visible. Then live them out every day. Here's the thing. It's good to have that up there because it sets a standard for you. And when you fall short of it, and you will fall short of it, trust me, there are days when I make decisions out of fear. There are days when I'm tight-fisted. There are days when I'm just an arrogant SOB, right? Like, it happens. Admit when you messed up. People can smell a hypocrite. Worst thing you can do is act like you didn't do it. No, I'm not. No, listen. When you aren't living that, you say to your kids, hey, as an act of humility, man, Dad just made a decision out of fear. Was not courageous. Dad just made an unwise decision. I invested in something without seeking counsel, right? Admit it, but here's the thing. That will speak volumes to your family too, about your desire to live by a purpose and vision. You say, no, this is the standard we're living for. This is the prophetic vision. This is what our life, we want it to look like, and we're going to move towards that. And we may not hit the mark all the time. Trust me, you won't hit the mark all the time. I'm living proof of that. But if you've got something to aim for and you're moving towards that, I believe God can do some things in your life that you never dreamed possible. He's going to take you places you never could have imagined. But we've got to have a vision for our lives because everybody gets somewhere in life and some people get there on purpose. And the ones who get there on purpose are ones who have lined their values with Jesus's values, and they live that out every day intentionally and focused. And I know some of you guys out there, you say, man, this seems like something for CEOs, or this is going to take too much thought. And I'm telling you, you can't afford to not do this. Because one of these days, you're going to be in a casket. And you want people to say good stuff about you. And here's the thing, you can't fake who you really are because people are watching what you're doing. And if you want to see what someone values, look at what they do. And the cool thing about it is you can change that today. You can become a whole new person. You can change everything today. And it just starts with a decision and then articulating, being very honest and clear about where are my values now and where do I want them to be. And then make some, I keep holding up this pillow like it's like the Bible. It's not, right? But I'm just saying, write out a clear picture of where you want to go and who you want to be so that at the end of your life, we can say, man, he was a person of integrity. He was a person of humility. We don't care what you did because people will forget what you did. But they'll remember who you were. And that's how we can let our light shine before men that they may see our good works and glorify our Father in heaven when we're living that out every day. So can you imagine what it would be like? Every morning to wake up and you say, you know what, today I may never accomplish my goals. But you know what, I can go to bed every night knowing that I've lived in line with the values that I've set for myself. And when you live that way, man, I'm telling you, there's a lot more peace in our family right now. My wife told me that last night. She's like, I like the person you're becoming. I was like, that's the greatest compliment she's ever given me. Because I've been an angst-ridden, angry person for a long time, right? But it's because my values were jacked up. And again, I wasn't some horrible person, but I was living for the wrong focus. And can you imagine what it'd be like every morning for you to wake up and say, today I'm going to live by this value system. I may have to sacrifice some stuff, but that's going to bring even more meaning when I do that. What kind of a vision would you have for your life if you woke up every morning saying, this is who I'm going to be? And not only that, can you imagine how many people you could point to Jesus with your life? When they look at you and say, that's a person who's living with intention and focus in a world full of fear and anger and chaos. That's a person that I can look to. And through that, we can let our light shine before men. They can see our good works and glorify our Father in heaven. You can do this. You can do this. You can be a person who lives intentionally, not tossed around by the waves, a person who lives with vision and focus. And when you get to the end of your life, you can say, I did it. And most importantly, the greatest compliment we'll ever get is not what people say at our funeral, is when we stand before God himself and he says, well done, good and faithful servant. Come on into your eternal rest. You did well. And that's what I believe is going to happen for every one of us when we live our lives with focus and vision. Y'all receive that?
Hey, thanks for joining us this morning. If you would like to give toward our ministry to see more resources put out online, check out crossroadsc.com/giving. And don't forget, we have 3 services on Sunday morning at 8:30, 10 o'clock, and 11:30. We hope to see you there.